So now the problems that we cited earlier on, the one of moral and natural evil. William Rao has quoted the problem in the following manner. He's formulated his syllogism in the following manner. There is existence or instances of existence of intense suffering, where an omnipotent and omniscient being could have, which an omnipotent and omniscient being could have prevented without thereby losing a greater good or the resulting of an equal evil. Because the question is this, that if he would have prevented it, it would have resulted in a greater evil or prevented a good from coming into existence. So his first premise is this, that there are instances of intense suffering, let us say that little child of 5, that an omnipotent and an omniscient being could have prevented without the loss of greater good that was intended from this event, or the result or resulting of a greater evil without any of this. That's the first. The second premise is an omnipotent, perfectly good being would prevent occurrences of intense suffering unless it could not do so without thereby losing greater good or permitting equal evil. The conclusion is there does not exist an omnipotent, omniscient, holy, good God. He does not deny the existence of God, but undermines the existence of God, yet explicitly denies the existence of a theistic form of God. Can we see that from the whole argument? Now here his argument has got two premises. One is theological one, and the other one is inductive one. The theological one is an omnipotent, omniscient, theistic God who is perfectly good would prevent instances of intense suffering without losing any good or permitting greater evil. That's the theological premise. And the next one is the inductive one. There are instances which are not prevented, and apparently their prevention would not have led to the permitting of greater evil or loss of any good. We can see that he is operating at these two levels. Now, the response to this sort of an argument is known as a theodicy. It's obviously a Greek word coined from the word theo and dike. Theo means God, and dike means justification or justifying God. Now there are several ways of doing this. There are several ways of looking at this particular problem. One is, and all of them have been mentioned by all of us here. One is not to respond to it, but to say that actually evil doesn't exist, it's illusionary. In that case, it doesn't pose a problem. Another is to question the premise that are there. So for example, he is saying that there are intense sufferings which are gratuitous, pointless. To say this is presumptuous. I am on the 20th floor, looking out of my window, cannot see a caterpillar upon the grass, and I deduce there are no caterpillars. This is known as a no-seeum inference. Because I don't see it, it is not there. There are several examples given for the absurdity of this particular assertion that he has made. They say it is like a person who is inside the forest and who examines the forest and says the rest of the world has trees, whereas he has not seen the rest of the world, and is such an inference accurate? That's another way of responding to it by undermining it. But as me and you here are seeing and will see, it doesn't make any sense, and we are pressed within ourselves for reasonable answers. That just because we don't see the good that a horrendous crime is resulting, the horrendous suffering will give, does not necessarily mean that there is good. If there is good, then we would much rather see it. So it balances itself off, and the question is still there. A third way is by offering a proper defense to say, why is God justified, given that He is the God that we worship and allows evil to continue? Now, before we go into some of the responses, and we try and build towards one of the responses that has been given historically of the optimal world, we will look at some other theological systems. The problem of theodicy does not touch the advocates of open theism as opposed to orthodox theists. Orthodox theists assert God is all-powerful and all-knowing and all-good. Open theists put limitations to God's attributes. They state that God either does not have foreknowledge or does not have middle knowledge. By foreknowledge, what they mean is that God created the world, free-willed individuals, and doesn't know the outcome of the exercise of their free will. In which case we can say, yes, He is excused for allowing pointless evils to continue. Or that He does not have middle knowledge. By middle knowledge, what we mean is, He does not know what free-willed creatures will choose at any point. Not the outcome of it, but what they will choose. Whereas orthodox theists, such as the theory of the Molinist theory, that God is omniscient, encompassing both foreknowledge and middle knowledge. But it then brings in another problem as well. And the other problem is there a point to pray to God if He does not have foreknowledge or middle knowledge? Is there a point to pray to Him? If by prayer what we mean is intervention and for God to relieve the suffering. If prayer is meant for us to be able to endure the suffering, then fine, we can pray. But commonly what people understand from prayer is that they can count on their God to intervene. And of course, as Muslims, we find that our literature is explicitly advocating a God that can do anything at any point, at any time, and who knows everything. The Quran is explicit about it. Allah ala kulli shayin qadir, sami'un alim, sami'un basir, so on and so forth. On the other hand, if we were ready to believe in a God who is uncaring, then again we can permit the existence of evil. Why would we want to worship a God who does not care for our well-being? And it is inconsistent with our spiritual literature. An atheist obviously does not find any problem with this because they don't believe in a God altogether. But a theist cannot escape this problem. Now, the sort of responses that are given are the responses that me and you spoke about in the first session. And before coming to the optimal world theodicy, we're looking at other. John Hick gave the theodicy of God creating a world, choosing to step away, gently encouraging his creatures to endure the difficulties and to form a loving bond with him. He states we were created in the image of God and we are called upon to become God-like. And that is the reason God allows instances of evil, even if they be pointless evil on the face of it. That's the response that he has given. We ask, of the 7 billion people on the face of this earth, how many are becoming God-like? Is that something that is observable? How many are becoming God-like? When two nations go to war, it's the most destructive event within the human community. How much of godliness prevails at that point, where both sides are seeing that they are hurting each other, that the person who is being killed may have young children, may have parents that depend upon them. Apart from their personal hurt and agony, it affects everybody else. Now, in the Second World War, a curious incident took place. And this is a discussion of another set of, well, this is a point for another set of discussions, that the Germans and the British were fighting. On the day of Christmas, they called a momentary truce. Both the sides came out of their trenches and shared in a game of football. Afterwards, they went back into their trenches and started killing each other. When they came out of their trenches, they found that they could, as human beings, interact. It wasn't the case at all that one was godly and the other one was demonic. They were both equal. So we ask here that indeed, if that's the case, then out of the 7 billion people, how many are godly? What Hick asserts is, and what he calls it, is there is an epistemic distance, that God creates a distance between himself and us, so we have to strive and understand him. In response, what we are saying is, out of the 7 billion people, how many are possibly going to do that or are doing that? And 2, was there a need to create such a huge epistemic distance where people find themselves lost and only a few find themselves going to God? Is this a theodicy that is convincing? Another theodicy is that without the existence of evil, morality would not have been possible. We've all offered that response here as well. We are saying, was horrendous evil required to promote morality? The evil of the nature that we explained of that young child, was such horrific evil required to promote morality? 2, are we really becoming moral? Another theodicy that is offered is, well, if it wasn't for evil, good would not be known. We are asking a fundamental question here, actually 2. Do we need horrendous evil to understand good? Or can we, at the exclusion of horrendous evil, still understand good? Can you see that? But there is a question beyond this question, and that is, why create a world which has evil in the first place? What was the reason for it? Why should we need to know good at all? In fact, the theistic world, especially the world in which majority of us exist, does not make much sense. Because God has foreknowledge and middle knowledge. Well, then what was the point of all of this? At all. These are pressing problems. Another theodicy is growth. Had it not been for evil, growth would not have occurred. Given the choice, I would rather not grow. Why should the people in Rwanda die for my growth? Why should millions of Jews be killed in gas chambers for the rest of the world to grow? And how many people are growing? 2, can there not be a notion of growth without extreme amounts of evil? These are some of the counter sort of arguments to this particular form of theodicy. But I would like us to think over one point that this horrendous evil argument is making. 1, can we reasonably assert that there can be lesser evil? The problem that is being posed is that fine, evil exists and it is compatible with the nature of God. That is fine. But we are citing instances of apparently pointless evil. That evil and the existence of God, are they consistent? One of the responses that came from the floor, and it is shared by the philosophers, is, well, God is mysterious. We don't know what purpose that apparently useless evil is serving. And we trust in God. Well, then the response is, surely God could have made it known to us why He allows such useless evil to exist in such extremes. Now here we ask a question, just to get our minds going. Can we actually ever meaningfully state extent of evil is intense or less? For example, let us imagine a world in which the greatest calamity as far as physical ailments are concerned is not cancer or leukemia, it's a severe headache. We are in that sort of a world, hypothetically. For a person who doesn't get a headache, who then gets a severe headache, would that not be seen as a horrendous evil? What I'm saying is, aren't these things relative altogether? Is there, in the realist sense, not something like pointless evil, but something like horrendous evil? Or would that be the case at all points? And therefore, what is the opponent saying? Is the opponent saying in the final analysis that there should be no evil? And then we ask, well, what is evil. We have obviously stated what we mean by evil: construction and destruction, growth and destruction. So they are saying, given that this world is this world, there is no place for a theistic God in there. And a theist has to respond that given that this world is this world, the way it is, God has a place in this world. If we have arrived at this level, then that sets the scene for presenting the theodicy known as the optimal world theodicy. That God could not have created anything better than this world that He has created with whatever is inside it and however it is. This is known as the optimal world theodicy. As opposed to this, there is another theodicy known as the non-optimal world theodicy. That whatever world God would have created, there could have been a better one that we could have envisaged. So truly, God could not do anything but that He would have been criticized. No matter what type of a world He would have created, there would have been one that we could have envisaged to be better than it, or slightly better than it, or improved upon it. That's the non-optimal world theodicy. As opposed to that, this is a theodicy, which we will explain in a little while, which asserts that the world that God has created is the optimal world. There can't be anything better than this world. The problems it needs to resolve and answer is that then is God claimed to be the same God that we desire to worship? All capable, all loving and caring and perfectly good, and all knowing. Can we maintain that God together with maintaining that this world is a perfect world and God is also perfect? It is a huge task. It is a huge task, and we want to look into it in a little while once we resume. But we will find that it too might suffer tremendously from the larger questions that we asked. Well, why create in the first instance? Why create? Why am I here? Was I even asked to be here? That then has the resolution. There was a fire in a particular place as a result of a lightning striking a forest. Little children were burnt alive and a lot of animals were killed. Now, by our theological definition, little children are sinless, especially a 6-month-old baby. How do you equate punishment with that? Yes? How do we understand punishment in the context of that infant? And beyond the infant, the animal kingdom, the animal life that was destroyed. When the tsunami came, of course, the people were killed, but in that were many children. And in that were newborn babies. And they were all killed. There is another theodicy which obviously I wanted to discuss about, and we can all discuss about it now, and I hope somebody comes to it, but I'll just say it again from the Quran, of a better afterlife that compensates for all the evils at present, as a point to question the theistic God. Can you see that? For example, if in the future it is asserted that the earth has awareness, and when an earthquake happens, the earth suffers tremendous pain, then that would only pose a problem if the earth complains about that suffering to God and say, if you are here, Why are you allowing this to happen? So it has to be human-centric and from a human perspective, because at this point in time, we are those sentient beings who have the ability to question.